Sangha. So I am continuing to base my talk this morning on the Satipatthana Sutta, and specifically something that Winton Higgin suggests in Revamp. And he says that the sutta implicitly proposes two divergent agendas. The first one being an open-ended exploration and a deepening into our subjective experience. And the second one being the achievement of some sort of end state, be it called realization, final knowledge, understood as salvation or liberation. And he goes on to write in this book that we need to clarify our choice of where we want our spiritual lives to go before we can figure out how to apply the sutta. What he says, you need to determine what you want. Do you want to deepen your subjective experience or achieve final liberation or salvation? Now, that might not sound at cross purposes, but actually, after a point, it is at cross purposes. And it really is going in different directions, really. That's perhaps better said. And then based on those goals, how you actually understand the sutta and practice, it will be different, as will your life be different. So, I'm going to do my best job of explaining how I understand this. It's not the only understanding by a long shot. So if your goal is the latter, the second, which is ending, at some sort of realization or final knowledge, then it'll lead you more towards turning away from life and engaging in a more disciplined practice that has the promise of leading you out of this morass of unsatisfactoriness, of pain, hurt, trauma, all the hard stuff. And there's many words for it: liberation, salvation, the unconditioned. And these words appear in the suttas. And it seems like what happens is, in part, this way this works is that you focus on what is distasteful and sometimes even disgusting about our human experience, with the promise of the final end of dukkha. If, alternatively, you aspire to deepen your subjective experiences in this life, then you're going to turn towards these existential and personal difficulties and learn from them. And you're going to turn towards them and develop the capacity to hold steady. Hold your seat is one way we speak of it, in the face of the challenges of your life. Become more curious about your subjective experience. Notice what is beautiful and enriching. So clearly, we're promoting and teaching this direction in reflective meditation. And when we deepen our subjective experience, what we're going to find in there is the 1,000 joys and the 1,000 sorrows, as is commonly referred to. Not exactly 1,000, but a lot. And everything in between joy and sorrow. This path is rich and challenging in a different way from the other path. And really, the Satipatthana Sutta really describes the areas of our subjective experience we can turn towards with greater and greater awareness. In my early years of meditation and Dharma, I was disturbed by the tension between these two directions, though I don't think I could state it that way. I just knew that there was some tension, and I really didn't know what to do sometimes. On one hand, I wasn't ready or maybe even capable of leaving this life behind. I didn't want to leave my relationships, my creative projects, my good meals with friends, my satisfying career. And as I practice the Satipatthana Sutta, becoming more aware of my body, my feelings, my thoughts, my moods, my states of mind, I was starting to develop a reverence for life. though I sort of knew this was considered a lower direction. It seemed like in the suttas, the high road was turning away from all of this. So when I was growing up, I grew up in suburbia, USA during the 1950s, and I had a very clear sense of things were shallow. Now, as I look back, I kind of long for some of the safety of it and some of the ways that it was more simple and clear cut. But there was a price to pay for it. So being a baby boomer means, and I was actually born in 1948, so I was born right in the shadow of really what I now think of as the terrors of World War II. And but it seemed like the people around me, and they were almost all Jews in my family and my community, they were looking away from the horrors, and they sort of numbed down, concerning themselves with raising the next generation and the acquisition of the good life. But I yearned for something deeper. Um, I left home in search of it. My favorite song at the time was Nina Simone singing, "I Wish I Knew How It Would Be to Be Free." And of course, she was speaking of liberation as a Black woman. However, there was something that deeply resonated for me. I too wanted to be free, probably of many things. Though, as I think back, I think it was of the shallowness, of the consumerism, and actually being free of the denial of pain and trauma. Now, actually, the second alternative that Winton spells out, I couldn't imagine being free of the contingencies of this life. And I did try to achieve it once. Well, probably more than once, but once that's very etched in my memory. Um, when I went on a 3 week self retreat, and this was a big deal for me. I was really going to give this practice my everything. And it was in El Rito, New Mexico. We rented a house, and there was a big E. Of course, it stood for El Rito, but there was a big E on the made out of stone on the hillside. And I took it as a sign. I took it as a sign that on this retreat I was to become enlightened. I did a lot of striving. I worked really hard on this at this retreat. There was really little enjoyment or relaxation, but alas, the retreat ended, and I was no closer to enlightenment. So after that retreat, I gave up my search for final realization. Instead, I fully immersed myself in my life. I went to graduate school, got a degree in counseling psychology, started a private practice, got into a relationship that now sustains me into old age. I wasn't on the path of final liberation and leaving it all behind. I was on the path of deepening my awareness of my subjective experience. So, back to the two directions spelled out by Winton Higgins. For some of you, your path may be final liberation or salvation, getting off, as they call it, the wheel of samsara, getting away from the repetition of pain, liberation from your personal and the existential human condition, getting off the wheel of rebirth. And if that is your direction, I'm not sure that our practice, reflective meditation, can help you get there, though I am pretty sure it can lead you to a more flourishing life right now in this life that you're living. So there I end my talk, and we begin our practice of reflective meditation. So